The moment I handed my family the lake cabin keys on my birthday and watched their faces drop from smug indifference to pure shock, I knew I had finally done something that would change everything between us forever. For 32 years, my birthday had been a non-event in my own family, something they forgot, ignored, or casually brushed aside like it didn't matter that I existed at all. But this year was different, because this year I had money, I had independence, and I had a secret that none of them saw coming. So before I even tell you how we got here, I need to ask you something straight up. If your own family ignored you every single year of your life, would you still feel obligated to include them when you finally had something they wanted? Or would you do what I did and make them feel even a fraction of what you've felt your whole life? I didn't always think I'd end up being that person, the one with a dramatic story and a bitter edge when talking about family. When I was younger, I was desperate for their approval. I was the kid who waited by the door on my birthday, hoping someone would come home with a cake. The teenager who pretended it didn't hurt when everyone forgot again, and eventually the adult who stopped reminding people altogether because being forgotten on purpose somehow hurt less than being forgotten accidentally. My family is big, loud, and very close with each other, at least on the surface. My parents had me young, and then they had my two siblings pretty close together after me, my sister Jenna and my brother Mark. From the outside, we looked like a normal, happy family. Inside the house, though, there was a very clear hierarchy, and I was always at the bottom of it. Jenna was the golden child. She was pretty, outgoing, did well in school without trying, and somehow everything she touched turned into a celebration. Mark was the baby, the miracle boy. My mom liked to call him, because he was born after a miscarriage she never really healed from. Everything revolved around them. Their achievements were praised, their mistakes were excused, and their birthdays were full-blown events. Balloons, parties, friends over, cakes with their names spelled correctly, presents wrapped in shiny paper. Meanwhile, my birthdays were quiet. Sometimes there was a rushed, "Oh yeah, happy birthday," at dinner, sometimes nothing at all. Once, when I was 10, my parents realized it was my birthday when my aunt called to say happy birthday, and my mom literally mouthed, "Oh, shitty," and then laughed it off like it was some kind of harmless joke. At first, I thought it was my fault. I thought maybe I wasn't exciting enough, or lovable enough, or loud enough to deserve attention. I tried everything. I got good grades. I stayed out of trouble. I helped around the house. I even tried acting more like Jenna, smiling more, talking more, being more visible. None of it worked. When I turned 16, I didn't even get a card. That was the year something in me shifted. I remember sitting on my bed that night, staring at my phone, watching as midnight passed, with no messages, no knocks on my door, no acknowledgement from the people who were supposed to care the most. I told myself, okay, this is who they are. Adjust accordingly. From then on, I stopped expecting anything. I moved out as soon as I could, went to college on scholarships and part-time jobs, and built my own life piece by piece. I still showed up to family gatherings. I still smiled and nodded when they talked over me. I still watched them celebrate everyone else. I just didn't expect to be celebrated myself. Every year on my birthday, my phone would stay quiet. Sometimes Jenna would remember a few days later and text, Sorry I missed your birthday lol." Sometimes my mom would call the next week and say, "We'll do something next time." Next time never came. What made it worse was that my family wasn't poor or struggling. They had the time, the money, and the energy to celebrate everything else. They just didn't care enough to celebrate me. I remember one year, when I turned 25, they threw a huge surprise party for Mark's promotion at work, complete with a banner, catered food, and speeches. My birthday was 2 days before that party. Nobody said a word. I stood there holding a plastic cup of soda, watching them cheer for him, and I felt invisible. That night, I went home and cried harder than I had in years, not because I wanted a party, but because I wanted to matter. Fast forward a few years, and my life started to change in ways I never imagined. I landed a job in tech, worked my way up, and eventually started my own small consulting business. It wasn't overnight success, and it wasn't easy, but it was mine. For the first time, I had financial stability, then comfort, then actual freedom. I bought myself nice things. I traveled. I built friendships that felt more like family than my real family ever had. And slowly, quietly, I started planning something just for me, something symbolic. Something that said, I made it, even without you. I've always loved lakes. There's something about the stillness, the way the water reflects the sky, the feeling that time slows down. Whenever life got overwhelming, I'd find a lake and sit by it, just breathing. So when I had enough saved, I started looking at lake cabins, not as an investment, not as a family getaway, but as my own personal retreat, a place where I could go on my birthday and not feel forgotten. After months of searching, I found it. A small but beautiful cabin by a quiet lake, surrounded by trees, with a dock that caught the sunset just right. The day I signed the papers, my birthday was 3 weeks away. I remember thinking, this is the best birthday gift I've ever gotten, even though I was the one giving it to myself. Here's the thing though. My family had no idea. I didn't tell them about the cabin. I didn't tell them how well I was doing financially either. I'd learned the hard way that sharing good news with them often turned into comparisons, dismissive comments, or subtle jabs. So I kept it to myself, or at least, I tried to. Because about a week before my birthday, my mom called me out of the blue, sounding unusually cheerful. She asked how I was, made small talk, and then said, "So, we're thinking of doing a big family trip this year. Maybe somewhere by a lake. You know, just all of us together." My stomach dropped. I could feel something coming. She went on to explain that Jenna and Mark were burned out and needed a break, and that it would be so nice to have a place where everyone could relax. Then she said the words that made my hands shake. "We were hoping maybe you could help out, financially, since you don't have kids or anything." There it was. Not a happy birthday. Not a, "we miss you." Just a request. A request that made it painfully clear that they still saw me as an afterthought, useful only when convenient. I didn't say anything about my birthday. I didn't remind her. I just listened. And then, something inside me snapped into focus. I realized that for the first time in my life, I had leverage. I had something they wanted, and they didn't even know it yet. I told my mom I'd think about it. She sounded relieved, thanked me, and hung up. Later that day, Jenna texted me saying, "Hey, Mom said you might help with the family trip. That'd be awesome." Still no mention of my birthday. As my birthday got closer, the familiar heaviness crept in. Even with the cabin, even with my independence, there was still that small, wounded part of me that hoped, irrationally, that maybe this year would be different. Maybe they'd surprise me. Maybe they'd remember. My birthday came on a Tuesday. I woke up early, checked my phone, and saw nothing. No calls. No texts. Not even a generic Facebook message. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, feeling that old ache resurface. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. I took the day off work, packed my car, and drove to the cabin. For the first time ever, I spent my birthday exactly how I wanted to. I grilled food, sat by the water, watched the sun set, and felt something close to peace. That night, my mom texted me asking if I'd decided about the family trip. That was it. That was the moment I decided I was done being quiet. I replied, "Actually, I have something to show you all. Let's get together this weekend." They were immediately interested. Suddenly, everyone was available. Suddenly, group chats were active. Jenna sent smiley faces. Mark asked questions. Nobody said happy birthday. I didn't correct them. By the time Saturday rolled around, I had rehearsed this moment 100 times in my head. Part of me was nervous. Part of me was angry. And part of me felt weirdly calm, like I was finally about to tell the truth. When they all arrived at the meeting spot, I could feel the familiar dynamic settling in. Jenna talking the loudest, Mark joking, my parents fussing over them. I waited until everyone was there. I took a deep breath, reached into my bag, and pulled out a set of keys. That's where I'm going to pause, because this was the moment everything balanced on a knife's edge. This was the moment I had to decide whether I was going to keep protecting their feelings, or finally protect my own. So that's the situation I was in. Standing there with those keys in my hand, my heart pounding, my family looking at me with mild curiosity, but no real concern. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and really think about it. If you were me, after being ignored year after year, would you still take the high road, or would you finally make them feel the weight of their choices? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because what I did next changed my relationship with my family forever. When I stood there holding those keys, I could feel every ignored birthday, every forgotten moment, every swallowed disappointment pressing down on my chest all at once. My mom squinted at the keys like she was trying to place them, Jenna tilted her head with mild interest, and Mark smirked like he expected a joke. Nobody thought this moment had anything to do with me. That realization alone almost made me put the keys back in my pocket and walk away. But I didn't. I cleared my throat, felt my voice shake, and said, "I bought a lake cabin." The silence that followed was so thick it felt unreal. Jenna's smile froze. Mark's eyebrows shot up. My dad leaned forward like he hadn't heard me correctly. And my mom just stared at me like I'd broken some invisible rule I was never supposed to cross. I told them I'd bought it a few weeks ago, that it was fully paid off, and that it was about 2 hours away, right on a quiet lake. For a split second, I saw genuine excitement flicker across their faces. Jenna actually clapped her hands and said, "Oh my God, that's perfect for the family trip." Mark laughed and said, "Damn, guess you've been hiding money from us." My dad nodded approvingly, like I'd finally done something worthy of acknowledgement. And my mom immediately launched into planning mode, talking about dates, who would bring what, and how nice it would be for everyone to finally relax together. They didn't ask why I bought it. They didn't ask how I felt. And most importantly, they still didn't say happy birthday. That's when I felt something inside me harden. I realized that if I didn't say something now, I never would. So I raised my hand slightly, cutting my mom off mid-sentence, and said, "There's something else you should know." She looked annoyed, like I was interrupting something important. I swallowed and said, "I bought the cabin for myself, as a birthday gift, because none of you remembered my birthday." Again. The room went dead quiet. You could practically hear the air conditioning hum. Jenna looked down at her phone. Mark suddenly found the floor very interesting. My dad cleared his throat, and my mom's face shifted into that defensive expression I'd seen my whole life, the one that said she was already preparing excuses. She laughed awkwardly and said, "Oh honey, don't be dramatic. We've just been busy." Busy. That word hit me harder than if she'd yelled. I felt years of pent-up frustration bubbling up, and before I could stop myself, I started talking. I told them about being 10 years old and watching my mom panic when she realized she'd forgotten my birthday. I told them about 16, 20, 5, and all the years in between. I told them how it felt to watch them celebrate everyone else while I stood on the sidelines pretending it didn't hurt. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. I told them how buying that cabin was the first time I'd ever done something just for myself, without waiting for their approval. My mom tried to interrupt me, saying she didn't remember it that way, saying I was exaggerating, saying I should have reminded them. That was when I snapped. I told her I shouldn't have to remind my own family that I exist. Jenna rolled her eyes and muttered something about me being sensitive. Mark shrugged and said, "It's not that deep." That hurt more than anything else, because to them, it really wasn't that deep. To them, my pain was an inconvenience, an overreaction, something to brush off so they could get back to what they wanted. I told them, very calmly, that the cabin was not a family vacation spot. I told them I wasn't paying for a trip, hosting anyone, or opening it up for group use. I said I might invite people I cared about someday, but right now, it was mine. Jenna's face hardened immediately. She accused me of being selfish, of holding a grudge, of punishing them for small mistakes. Mark laughed and said I was acting like a child. My dad finally spoke up and said he thought I was being unfair. And my mom, my own mother, said the words I'll never forget. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. That sentence broke something in me. I realized then that no matter what I said or did, they would never see me the way I needed them to. They would never take responsibility. They would never apologize sincerely. So I picked up my bag, put the keys back inside, and said, I'm not repaying anything. I'm just finally choosing myself. And I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just walked out, hands shaking, heart pounding, feeling both devastated and strangely relieved. The fallout was immediate. My phone blew up with texts and calls. Jenna sent long messages accusing me of ruining the family, saying I'd embarrassed her and hurt our parents. Mark sent memes like it was all a joke. My mom left voicemails crying, then angry, then crying again. My dad sent a single text saying, "We need to talk." I didn't respond. For the first time in my life, I didn't rush to smooth things over. I drove straight to the cabin and stayed there for a week. No noise. No guilt trips. Just me, the water, and the quiet. Something unexpected happened during that week. I started sleeping better. I felt lighter. I realized how much emotional weight I'd been carrying for people who never carried me. I spent my days reading, cooking, and sitting on the dock watching the sun rise and set. On my actual birthday night, alone by the lake, I sang happy birthday to myself and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I finally felt seen by the one person who mattered. Eventually, I did respond to my dad. We met for coffee. He told me my mom was hurt, that Jenna was angry, that Mark thought I'd overreacted. He asked me to apologize to keep the peace. And for the first time, I said no. I told him I wasn't apologizing for being hurt. I wasn't apologizing for telling the truth. And I wasn't apologizing for setting boundaries. He looked tired, older than I remembered, and said he didn't know how to fix it. I told him it wasn't my job to fix what I didn't break. Months passed. Holidays came and went. I wasn't invited to everything anymore. When I was invited, it felt different, strained, awkward. But something else changed too. My mom started texting me on my birthday. Just a simple, happy birthday? No excuses. No explanations. Jenna stopped asking for favors. Mark actually asked me how I was doing once. It wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't some dramatic apology scene where everyone hugged and cried, but it was real. And for once, it was on my terms. Now, every year on my birthday, I go to the cabin, sometimes alone, sometimes with friends who actually show up for me. I light a fire, cook a good meal, and remind myself how far I've come. I don't hate my family. I don't wish them harm. I just don't let them define my worth anymore. And that, more than the cabin, is the real gift I gave myself. So that's the whole story. That's what happened when I finally stopped accepting being ignored and chose myself instead. If you were on my side, if you think I did the right thing, go ahead and like this video. If you want to hear more real stories like this, make sure you subscribe. And I really want to know what you think about this whole mess, so drop your final thoughts in the comments. I'll see you all in the next story.